One of the darkest days in the history of the wrestling business occurred when one of the most respected men in the business became a murderer. And we learned that Chris Benoit had killed his wife, his child, and then himself. Because of that, you voted Chris Benoit, the number 3 most despised.
Number 3, Chris Benoit. Wow.
Wrong. I think that's a misconception of what he actually did, but within the business, I think Chris was very well liked and respected.
Most people would just like to forget that name existed.
I hate him.
Hey, Nancy was a friend of mine. His kid was a friend of mine. You know what I mean? But I don't know what the fuck happened there. No, I can't hate Chris. Really? I just can't do it. No.
That's tough. I don't know how you. It's tough hating a guy that obviously had to have some problems and issues, and it's tough to put him on that list, not knowing what was going through his mind.
Wow. Okay. About a week before the events transpired, Chris Benoit, I was on AOL, Chris Benoit tinkled in with an instant message. Hi, Bill. Oh, hi. How come you're not working for WWE? Do you want me to talk to somebody? I said, no, I've had some offers, et cetera, et cetera. He said, well, I'm sitting here with Daniel on my lap. We just wanted to say hello.
I don't think there were so few people that knew Chris. I think the only person that could answer that question is Eddie, and Eddie's not here. Because I think they were the only two that had that kind of a, and I think Steve to a degree. I think Steve Regal had some closeness with Chris.
Maybe people despise him for what he ended up doing, and I'm not going to defend him in that. I don't know reasonings behind it. Nobody does, but I liked him.
I would say before the incident in Georgia, Chris Benoit could have did anything he wanted to do. And in wrestling, you've experienced it, you've heard stories from other people. Wrestling, summed up, the bigger push you are, determines the value as a human being. So me, personally, where I was and putting people over, I was kind of treated like I was not a very good human being. Chris Benoit, obviously world champion, treated great. So the shock of this incident that happened, which I was there in Corpus Christi, Texas, or I think it was Corpus Christi, when the news broke and we didn't even know if he did it or what happened.
Hated? Well, hated only because of how his life ended at the end, but up to that point, he was one of the most loved guys in the business. And, for people who don't know and, hate Chris Benoit, you also need to know that when his father had his brain tested and sent it to whatever university, his brain came back as the brain of an 85-year-old Alzheimer's patient. And if it's an 85-year-old Alzheimer's patient, I'm not saying that just to forgive and forget, but at the same time, when you're an Alzheimer's patient, you're 85, and they don't know what they're doing. And I know that Chris didn't know what he was doing over that period, because I knew him, well enough to know that he wasn't that guy.
I think those who knew him and I think even those who didn't, obviously dislike what he did, but I don't think their actual feelings for him as a friend and a workmate have not changed.
I mean, he murdered his family, he murdered his young son, he murdered him, he killed himself. It's insane. It's still hard to actually, for you or even anybody in the business to actually come to grips. In this desensitized society, people are still saying, my God, I can't believe that happened.
I didn't want to believe it when I heard what happened, And this was before that whole thing aired on television and everything and all that. And like, even people in my family that didn't know, it was like, it just sounds, a mother would never hurt her child. Like it had to, like everybody was saying it had to be that. I didn't want to believe it. I don't want to believe somebody I knew for 16 years and liked, considered a friend, could be that much, could turn into that. Because I truly believe that he turned into that he was not always that person.
Yeah, we thought it was they just had the house built, and we thought, oh, it was gas leak or something like that. Then the crazy conspiracy theory stuff came out. You know, even somebody said Kevin Sullivan did it. And I mean, I know you asked him about that. Val Venus came up to me, and you know, Val's out there with me. We both talk about 9/11 and all this stuff, but I remember Val coming up to me and saying, "Hey, bro," he goes, "I heard he did it." I was like, "Come on, are you kidding me? Did Chris murdered his family and then killed himself?" I just saw him like 2 weeks ago. He seemed perfectly mellow, and you know, he's intense, but for him mellow. and he seemed, why would he do that? He loved his kids, loved his wife. He always talked about them. So that's what made it for me like, wow.
We're talking about the concussions and stuff, you know what I mean? You know, and obviously he was doing a lot of juice. You see how he looked bad, boy, he was looking thicker and more Wolverine-ish. You know, there's a reason they put the strap on him, you know, because he looked so well right then, you know what I mean? But he was jacked, ripped, cut, chiseled. But who knows what the fuck happened there, you know? But no, I have a hard time hating a lot of people. It's just, it's not in my vocabulary a lot.
When I first heard of Chris Benoit killing his family, I thought of Andre Waters. You know, I'm a huge fan of the Philadelphia Eagles. And a year prior to that, Andre Waters from the Eagles had, you know, committed suicide because, you know, many concussions, you know, depression, sleepless nights, and he went and blew his brains out. And I was like, Jesus Christ, the concussions got to Chris.
Well, I'm not a doctor, but you know, I really don't know. I mean, I never knew he had all those concussions. I didn't know he had that. You know, Chris was Chris since the day I met him. He was a bit of a loner at times, but no, there was no signs of that.
Chris was always kind of a loner. Just, you know, he was an intense dude, you know. But he was nice. He was quiet. They always say it about that guy, don't they?
I got put on a TV show with CNN Live that they didn't air because Vince was supposed to be on it. And everybody embraced him to say how great of a wrestler he was. And they was talking about the reason he had brain damage was because of taking chair shots in ECW. I said, he broke his wrist 3 or 4 times. I said, let me dissect this tape for you. And I hate to even say this boy's name, but Balls Mahoney's name came up in there. And I said, here's a chair shot that Chris Benoit is taking. And they did it fast. They said, okay, he got hit in the head. I said, okay, now slow it down. And the chair comes and the hand comes up. Damn. All right? I said, now here's Balls Mahoney hitting somebody upside the head, and that boy wore that damn chair like a hat. And he bent the chair over his head. I said, so don't come to me talking about he had brain damage from that crappy ECW wrestling when he never got hit in the freaking head. I still got brain damage to this day from when I cracked my skull. So I know what brain damage is. All right? But that crap that Benoit did, no, bro, that don't sit well with me, and I'm not one to, it ain't nothing you can show. He could be out kissing babies. He don't give a damn. Look what he did. I hate him.
Everybody would like to forget all the bad shit, you know, and just remember the good shit. But, I mean, it wasn't like this guy was a bit player in the wrestling industry that happened to kill his wife and child. He was a world champion at one time and really high up in the industry, you know, and somebody I considered a friend.
I had a friendship relationship with Chris and Nancy. So should they just eradicate that he never worked for us, like in the WWE? My feeling would be, no, they should recognize it, but there should be some sort of asterisk that unfortunately this happened, and we are horrified that something like this could have happened. He is part of our history, and this is what he did.
What he did was fucking horrible. You know, I was friends with Nancy. I didn't know that son. I knew his other son. And when I say no, his son, he would bring his son to the TVs and stuff. But fuck, my first night as the Blue Meanie, Nancy painted my face, you know. She would laugh at my laugh, you know, when we'd be in the locker room. Somebody would say something funny, and I would laugh. I have this cackle when I find something really funny. And she would laugh at my laugh, which would in turn make me laugh at her laughing at my laugh. And just the fact that I'll never see Nancy again.
Nancy was a friend of mine, and he killed Nancy. And I didn't know their kid, but he killed the kid too. But this is the part that made me laugh about that stuff that Chris Benoit did. He killed Nancy. He shot his kid up with Xanax and water, and he hung himself. But he was nice enough to himself to put a towel between his neck and the wire cable on his weight machine. So just in case he didn't break his neck, he wouldn't have a scar. Okay, so anything good to be said about him went out the door.
I don't know what happened. No one knows what happened there. Did he do it? Was it a setup hit that they were dead before he got there, and then a professional hit can make it look like you did it? I don't know. Did he do it? I don't know. Nobody knows. We weren't there. So people hate him for allegedly doing this stuff. However, there is a portion of the fan public that still demands respect for everything he did in the wrestling business.
Wait a minute, there's two more people above Chris Benoit.
I always got along with him great. He was always super, super sweet and nice to me. Even when I ribbed him, it was an indirect rib. He was so funny. We did a Brian Pillman memorial show. I think it was like the second one. It was a 6-man tag. It was Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, and Dean Malenko against Chris. I can't remember who was on our team anymore. And of course I was managing, but Benoit was looking for baby oil in the back right before the match. Nobody had baby oil. I said, well, I don't have baby oil, but I have cocoa butter, because that's what Terry Reynolds and I used to put on our legs to make them nice and shiny and firm looking. So I gave him the cocoa butter. 2 minutes later, he comes to me, he goes, you're ribbing me, right? And a straight Chris Benoit face. He had like an inch thick coat of cocoa butter all over his body, and he was white from the cocoa butter. He didn't realize you have to put on a very thin layer and rub it in to get a nice sheen.
The JBL thing happened. WWE brought me back to SmackDown, and I did my infamous match with JBL on SmackDown, where I come out of the limo and we shoot the angle and come back, and then we come back later in the show and we have our match. And I'm standing in the gorilla position, and out of nowhere, Benoit comes up to me and goes, he grabs my hand and goes, go out there and you fucking do it, man. Fucking, this is your moment, shine. He gave me a little pep talk. I was like, fucking Chris Benoit, you know, one of the best fucking workers in the world, you know, just came up to me and offered me a little bit of advice before one of my biggest matches against JBL. And he didn't have to do that. And then just to see a short year or two later, where a guy would just snap.
You have a guy, and I don't mean to laugh, a guy who this guy killed his family over the weekend and killed himself, and you have 2 more people in wrestling that are hated more than him? Oh my God, what is wrong with you people?
I totally see why he's number 3. He could be numbered 1 for murdering his family and himself.